And now, let's move on to another C, competence. And now we're going to talk about a completely different demographic, maybe, all right, which is we're going to be talking about perfectionism. In terms of competence, what we have to remember is that childhood and adolescence is the time to learn to fail and recover. And when we do not allow kids to fail and recover, they will fail during adulthood. True? And right now, there are entire populations that believe that the stakes are so high at getting a B+ that you can't fail. Let's use me as an example again. I am, diagnosably ADD, all right? And it is exactly, if you're interested, why I'm so successful and why I knew that you moved your seat. Because I see everything, right? Best definition of a squirrel, right? I see everything. But what it means is that in many other ways, I'm uneven. So the example I like to use is reading an EKG. Reading an EKG is the first thing you learn to do when you're going on the wards in medical school, okay? Because you have to be able to distinguish between something, chest pain, that's heart-related versus not heart-related. I am a full professor at an Ivy League medical school at what is arguably the best hospital in the world. I'm 30 years out of medical school. I cannot read an EKG. And I will never be able to read an EKG. Why? Because it is 12 different leads, all at the same time. I just can't do it. It's too much data at one time. I can't get my brain to focus, okay? And it's very easy to cheat because on the top, it gives you the answer. But that answer is read by a machine and is only right 90% of the time, which means that if you do not double check, a child could be hurt. Has a child ever been hurt because I can't read an EKG, ever in my history? No, because I'm the most uneven human being in the world, and I know it, and I failed badly, and I know my limitations. And because I know my limitations, I know how to get other people to read my EKG. I know how to use humor. I know how to do it without shame or stigma, right? And for many kids in this generation, including many kids in this district, that they will grow up and they will be 53 years old and they will read across the top, right? That's your nightmare. So let's talk about perfectionism and what's going on and how to prevent it. So why isn't it a good thing? What we want to do is we want to produce high achievers. What's the difference? If this room was filled and there's 1,000 people in the room and it's a concert and I get a standing ovation, then the high achiever looks around and says, what a joy it is to entertain people doing something I love. What does the perfectionist notice? She's sitting down. And the only thing I notice is her sitting down, and then I attribute to her expertise. I decide she must be the real expert in the room. She must be the teacher. Nobody else knows. She's the one I should get feedback from. If I'm playing soccer and I get 3 goals, the high achiever gets carried out on his buddy's shoulders. What does the perfectionist do or think? Corner shot went wide. I should have gotten 4. All right? So we do not want our kids to be perfectionists. We do want them to be high achievers. Perfectionists loathe themselves. They don't like themselves. They don't trust themselves. They have imposter syndrome. They don't believe that they've ever earned the praise that they've received. They are terrified of a B+ because they see a B+ as a sign that they failed and that their life will be over. They are terrified of the D word. So another thing that's created this perfect storm, the self-esteem movement began, but another thing is parenting style. We don't beat our children anymore, and we shouldn't. What we do now is we talk, and we talk in this way. Darling, I am so disappointed in you. Right? And kids, this generation of high-achieving kids is terrified of disappointing their children, their parents. When you are afraid of the B+ and you're afraid of disappointing people, then there is no out-of-the-box thought. And when there is no out-of-the-box thought, that is the death of creativity. Think about Tommy Edison in the 5th grade. Tommy goes to his teacher and he says, hey, you know what? I have this idea. I'm going to take electrons, which are not yet understood, force it through a filament, which is going to take me 700 tries to find the right filament, but it's going to create resistance, a concept in physics not yet fully explained. And that resistance is going to create heat, which is going to be translated into light. I'm going to encapsulate it in glass, which is going to magnify its effect. I'm going to change the world. Does Tommy get an A? No. Tommy gets medication, okay? Or Tommy gets told to write an essay about building a better candle, right? So when we have kids who are terrified of the B+, make no mistake about it, the best ideas will never come to fruition, okay? So another thing about perfectionists is that they resent constructive feedback. Right? They have imposter syndrome. They don't think they're ever as good as they were told that they have been. And as a result, as soon as someone begins to giving them constructive feedback, they see that as an attack on their very being. Let's go back to the first slide today, which is the definition of success. Do you see how we just undercut it with perfectionism? So, where does this come from? There are a couple places that this comes from. There are some lies that we tell kids. One of the lies that we tell kids is, kids, you're going to be taking a test in the 11th grade, and I want you to know that if you do well, then life's going to be handed to you on a silver platter. If not, mediocrity at the very best. But because this test will indeed determine your life, it's so important that you relax when you take it. Kids, I want you to know that in order to get in a good college right now, you have to take multiple AP classes and get A's in all of them because you want to show that you are going to stretch. And I also want you to know that it's important that they understand how creative you are. Darling, that's why you're taking bassoon lessons. I know you liked the drums when you were young, but the bassoon is so much more interesting that I thought it would really show how creative and what a standout you are. It's also important that they know what a team player you are, darling. That's why you've been on travel soccer since you've been 3 years old, and why your mom and I have no friends other than the other soccer moms. All right? But it's also important that you show that you're not only a collaborator, but that you show what a good leader you are, which is why it's important that by senior year, you're also able to be team captain. And one more thing, darling. I know what a good person you are. It's very clear, but it doesn't show up in your resume. That's why I'm sending you to Botswana for 9 days, darling. You're going to build a water purification system for HIV-positive children. So first off, am I making this up? Do you see this? What is the implicit message? You're not good enough the way you are. And if you are uneven in any way, it is dangerous. Human beings are uneven. Highly successful people are people who are smashingly good at something and who also have people skills. You're seriously looking at the most uneven person in the world. I'm great at what I do, and if you hand me a screwdriver, I begin to sweat. Did you see what happened this morning? Right? I was like, who can help? Right? All right? But if that was a gang kid with a gun, I would have been like, hey man, what's going on? All right? So I am the most uneven person in the world, and we are telling people that you have to be good at everything. And another thing that we are saying to kids is that you should just put off your present in lieu or in preparation for the future. And when we are doing that, we are making it so that kids are not going to like their future. So I grew up in a house where I knew that my dad was going to love me no matter what kind of a doctor I became. It was just so clear. And then what happened is I was always getting this message of, Ken, you know, you got to focus to get into a good college, you got to focus to get into a good med school, you got to focus to get into a good residency, right? And it's okay, you can begin dating at 32. What happens? I know so many doctors who do have anywhere between 24 and 28 years of education, all right? And so many of them don't like their patients. Why? Because if you give up your present in pursuit of a future, you resent the future when you get there, and you resent why you're made to feel. The only thing that heals in medicine is love, And therefore, what we can't do is make the path tortuous. Instead, we have to teach kids to live fully in their present, to love their present in preparation for their future. Really key. What are some other things that create perfectionism? Other things that create perfectionism are the fact that we live in a pretty toxic society where our heroes are our great sports players, our great, very good-looking actors who make $30 million, right? Who should our heroes be? Oh, and by the way, when they mess up, what do we do to them? We destroy them. It's news for 2 weeks, all right? Who should our heroes be? It should be teachers, right? And I say that not just when I have teachers in the room, okay? Here you are, people who, have given up a lot of money in order to build the next generation. I mean, you're heroes. As a pediatrician, I've given up a lot of money because you also, anybody who works with kids, gives up money and prestige in this society. Anybody who stays home with their mother with Alzheimer's disease, that's a hero. The policeman or the fireman who runs into a building that's burning, that person's a hero. And when we recognize those acts of loving kindness around us and those acts of heroism, we prepare kids to not be perfectionists, to not think they have to be good, the best, in order to get attention. And then if you screw up a little bit, we destroy you. Another source of perfectionism, especially for our marginalized kids, as you diversify, and what you will see is that as kids are needing to represent a group, and they receive microaggressions being things like, that B's good for you. Those subtle things that say, I really don't expect you to succeed. And as they receive or feel, like if you have a kid, whether it's because of a race or because they're immigrants, but they might be, or they're poor, those people might be the first people in their family to really finish high school and be headed for college. You need to know that the amount of pressure on those kids is quadrupled compared to other kids because they are representing. And if you don't have a diverse classroom and you have the one African-American kid in the class that every time someone wants an African-American perspective, you turn around and say, what do you think? What happens is you are making that kid need to represent, and that's going to be a source of perfectionism. Another source of perfectionism is the desire to spare parents, right? So if you have kids who come from very difficult home situations, perhaps there's a bad divorce, or perhaps there's historical trauma in an immigrant family, what happens is you produce kids who are very good little boys and girls because they don't want to create any more stress in their family. So say I went through a very difficult divorce and my daughter is taking care of me. Here's the conversation that needs to happen. Darling, I love you so much, and I've been through really difficult times, and you know that, and your mom and I are not getting along, and we haven't been able to hide that from you. But the one thing that we do have in common, absolutely, is that we both love you so much. But you know what I'm noticing? I'm noticing that you're taking care of me, right? And let me tell you, a lot of things in my life have not gone as well as planned. But one thing I still have confidence in is my ability to be your dad. And when you try to take care of me instead of letting me take care of you, I need you to know that you're taking that away from me. I beg you not to spare me. Got it?